Okay. Well, once again, welcome everybody. Very glad you're here. My name's Pat Allman-Rode. I'm the co-facilitator of Third Act Lawyers, and we're happy to welcome you tonight to a program that we think will be very interesting with a couple of folks from Lawyers for Good Government. Let me pull up my cheat sheet here. Okay. So in case there are some who aren't familiar with Third Act, we are a nationwide working group of Third Act, which is an organization of experienced Americans, that is folks over 60, working to preserve our climate and our democracy. Third Act was founded about 3 years ago by Bill McKibben and now has almost 100,000 members across the country. Within Third Act, the Lawyers Working Group looks for opportunities for our 300 or so members to use their legal experience to further our climate and democracy-related missions. And we look for opportunities to engage with other organizations whose missions are aligned with ours. And Lawyers for Good Government is a perfect example of that. And so we welcome Tracy Feit and Gary DiBianco. Tracy Feit is the founder and executive director of Lawyers for Good Government and the L4GG Action Fund, which is a pioneer organization she established in 2016 to mobilize the legal profession to defend democracy and the rule of law, protect civil and human rights, and advance environmental justice. Under her leadership, L4GG has grown from a grassroots social media community into a nationally recognized legal advocacy organization that has mobilized over 125,000 lawyers and delivered more than $100 million worth of pro bono legal services to underserved communities. Tracy's a sought-after commentator on legal and policy issues whose work and insights have been featured in the New York Times, Newsweek, Bloomberg, the Boston Globe, and other major outlets. Tracy's a graduate of Harvard Law, and during her 8 years of leadership at L4GG, she has proven that strategic coordination of the legal community can be effective in advancing civil rights, protecting democratic institutions, and ensuring equal justice under the law for all Americans. Gary DiBianco is a graduate of the Georgetown University Law Center. He clerked in the Eastern District of New York and worked in the DOJ Criminal Division. He then joined Skadden Arps, where he practiced for 25 years in the firm's Washington, D.C. and London offices, focusing on white-collar defense, SEC and enforcement matters, and complex civil litigation. Gary retired from Skadden in 2023 and joined Lawyers for Good Government earlier this spring, where he's now heading up L4GG's new pro bono litigation corps. And last but not least, Mark Friedman, our moderator this evening, is a founding member of the coordinating committee for Third Act Lawyers. Mark was a senior leader in Intel Corporation's legal department for 27 years before retiring in 2023. Mark also is a board member and strategic advisor at Pro Bono Net, a national nonprofit with a 25-year history of building innovative technology solutions and partnerships that deliver free legal help to millions of people every year. So let me get folks spotlit here, and Mark can take it away. Let's see, there we go.
Thank you, Pat.
And let's add spotlight on Tracy.
There we go.
And there he is. Okay.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome everybody. Really excited to be here this evening to introduce Tracy and Gary and the amazing organization that they're working with, Lawyers for Good Government. As mentioned earlier, that in Tracy's bio, I mean, the coordinating the legal community to effectively deal with the unbelievable challenges we're facing today, I think is one of the most important things that the members of the bar can do. You guys have been playing a leading role in that fight, and thank you for that. Before we get started with running through some of the exciting and innovative programs you guys have been running and are developing, and the opportunities that those offer for folks that are on the line tonight, I was hoping, Tracy, you could give us a little bit of background and context on the organization and its founding back in 2016. what needs were you trying to address with the organization? What kind of impact were you seeking to have? Give us a little bit of the flavor for that. What brought you into this work? And then after that, maybe fast forwarding to today and how the sort of mission of the organization and the priorities of the organization have evolved since its founding back in 2016.
Absolutely. And thank you, Mark. And thank you so much, everyone who's here. Really, really honored to be able to speak with you tonight. So Lawyers for Good Government started, I don't want to say by accident, but I will say I did not set out to build an organization in November 2016. To the contrary, I was just one of many millions of people watching on November 8th, 2016, as the results came in. I was with my daughter, who was 8 years old at the time, and we thought we were going to be celebrating the election of the first woman president of the United States. When that obviously didn't happen, I was actually very regretful that I had gotten her so excited about the idea, because when she went to bed that night, she was upset and she said, "What are we going to do now?" Not because of the gender of the person who was elected, but because I had spoken with her about some of the threats that were part of the election campaigns that were going on, including threats to the immigrant community, threats to freedom of speech, a lot of the issues that were really close to my heart. And so I went on social media, again, like many other people, and I set out just to try to bring together the ideas of the attorneys, because what I saw was so many people who were so upset and looking for ways to get involved. The lawyers were the ones showing up in these social media conversations with ideas. And unfortunately, the way social media works is you post your idea, someone sees it for 2 seconds, and then it just keeps scrolling down the page. So what I tried to do was organize the lawyers into a single place so that we could have a conversation and figure out how we could go about taking action. Again, in an effort to try to protect and strengthen our democratic institutions, protect civil and human rights, which I believed to be at risk based on some of the things that were said during the campaigns. And I thought, I'm going to get 15, 20, 25 lawyers together in a group, and we're just going to brainstorm. It turned out to be 125,000 lawyers, about 10% of lawyers nationwide who were interested in having that conversation. And it was that energy that was made so clear from the earliest days when we started to bring this group together that motivated me to take that next step, to say this needs to be more than a social media discussion. There is so much energy here. We have to figure out how to harness the energy and the willingness to take action of these attorneys and do what we can to make an impact. So that's what we've been doing ever since. And it's been an interesting journey because I've learned a lot since those early days about what stops lawyers from getting involved and why so many attorneys were interested in helping to build something brand new when there were already plenty of organizations for lawyers in existence. And it turned out that one of the biggest barriers is that a lot of groups are not set up to handle a massive influx of volunteers. And so that's been a big part of our journey, is understanding what does it take to create a program, a volunteer opportunity that will actually empower hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of lawyers to get involved in a way that's meaningful for them, but also really impactful. So that's a little bit about our background. As of today, we are a very different organization than we were in those early days when we were really just figuring things out. We're now a national nonprofit with a staff of, I think, it said 36 before, but now we're 37. We're growing very quickly. This year, I expect we'll be at about 45 staff by the end of this year. We work in a broad array of issue areas, but we divide them into 3 big pillars. The first one being democracy and rule of law, second one being civil and human rights, and third one being climate change and environmental justice. So really excited, again, to be here tonight, and happy to answer any other questions, Mark, you have about the organization as a whole before we dive into the details.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, excited for the discussion. I think your focus aligns so well with our organization, where we're third act, as I've said previously. It's like we're not third watch, third learn. We're third act. I mean, we're a bunch of older Americans, lawyers in this group, or legal professionals who want to get engaged. So getting your thoughts and learning more about that tonight is going to be fantastic. Gary, a few minutes maybe from you on what brought you more recently to Lawyers for Good Government.
Sure, and it'll pick up on Tracy's point about how her organization has really been designed to bring in volunteers, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, but in the most recent election, and particularly after inauguration, things were even worse than I anticipated. And I had been in Washington, D.C. for a long time, and I was pretty pessimistic. And I felt that I needed to get involved, and I began talking to organizations that did the kind of work that Tracy's organization does. But as I was a retired unaffiliated lawyer, and as an unaffiliated lawyer who couldn't rely on, malpractice insurance from a firm, most of the organizations I talked to just weren't set up to have like a one or a two volunteer effort, even if the person like me was an experienced lawyer and I kind of knew what I was doing. And so my thinking evolved a little bit from how can I get involved doing some legal work to how could I mobilize other people like me, and how could I put in some time where if we got an umbrella organization going to bring in more volunteers doing litigation, and we gave them a framework and malpractice insurance, we could really multiply the number of hours. And so I was out talking to a bunch of organizations, not knowing that Tracy had already had discussions within her organization about how they wanted to get into litigation projects. And so when we got on a Zoom together, it was like a perfect match.
Fantastic. My first Zoom together with you guys too, I had a big smile on my face because this challenge of unaffiliated lawyers finding ways to meaningfully plug in has been the one we've been wrestling with ever since we founded Third Act Lawyers. And I came from a big law and then a big corporate background, and we had a very substantial pro bono efforts, and easy for those groups to plug in, and the resources we offered to the nonprofit world. But coming in as an individual, it's a whole different calculus, and I would love to learn more about that tonight. Tracy, do you want to let's kick it off and then start learning about your organization and the work it's doing, and I think you have some slides to share too for the discussion.
Great. All right, let's see. All right, are you able to see the slides? Okay, fantastic. So let me fast forward through. We've already covered who we are, so I'm going to skip past that. We've covered a little bit about our organization, but I'll just highlight a couple things on this slide. Our 501c3 is called Lawyers for Good Government, and that is the entity through which we do almost all of our pro bono and direct legal services work. We also run the Lawyers for Good Government Action Fund, which is our 501c4, and that entity is responsible more for our legislative advocacy. And both organizations work together on the education piece of what we do. In our first 8 years, the programs that we designed and built and managed to result in more than $100 million worth of pro bono legal services being donated by, again, thousands of lawyers. We work with, over the years, more than 150 large law firms and in-house legal teams. But our capacity for mobilizing pro bono attorneys has grown steadily year after year. So, for example, this year alone, we are on track to mobilize about $50 million in pro bono. I think we've already done about 30 so far this year. And we're really proud of that because, like I said, from the beginning of our organization, the question we were seeking to answer is, how can we harness more of the energy and talent and skills and expertise of lawyers who may not be finding it easy to place themselves in a volunteer opportunity right now? So our approach over the years has been to really look for areas where lawyers can make a difference. We're very diligent about understanding what already exists and where there are gaps. We then look to understand what are the barriers that have stopped maybe other organizations from developing programs or from creating these opportunities. And then we build programs that are designed from the ground up to help overcome those barriers. So in that way, we're able to inspire, train, and really mobilize lawyers for meaningful action. So our top priorities have been a lot of crisis response and harm reduction, by which we mean Ideally, we will be able to create enough systemic change that not so many people will be harmed by the actions of government. Unfortunately, we're not there right now. And so while we pursue systemic change, we think it's also really important to help as many of the people who are being harmed today as possible. And that's through litigation and direct services. We try to help defend the rule of law by contributing to a united legal front. We train lawyers to advocate at all levels of government and helping to build a grassroots legal lobby for coordinated advocacy. So I've already talked about our 3 pillars. I'm not going to bore you by going into more details about those, but if you're curious, there's more information on our website. So why don't we get into some of our key initiatives and campaigns? Now, before we do that, I want to say that we have so many different programs running. I'm not going to be able to present all of them tonight. But if you are interested in getting involved with any type of the issue areas covered by our 3 pillars, I encourage you to reach out. And I'll give you the contact information towards the end of this presentation. But we have a whole team of pro bono experts on our staff who would love to speak with you, get a better understanding of what kind of work you're hoping to do, and ideally help match you with an opportunity that's a good fit. But for tonight, we're going to highlight a few of the opportunities where we have openings for, in some cases, hundreds of attorneys. So I'll start with the Federal Fund Protection Clinic. So this administration, as you know, has canceled federal grants, frozen funds, initiated terminations, which means that billions of dollars in federal funding that has already been committed are at risk. We knew this was going to happen, unfortunately, so we started building this program long before Inauguration Day, but it's proven to be even more needed than we hoped it would be. We are now serving, I think, more than 700, it's actually more than 800 now, federal grantees that are facing freezes, audits, or terminations, and we've trained and mobilized more than 400 pro bono attorneys, but we still need more pro bono assistance. This program is serving as a lifeline for frontline organizations who don't have legal resources, and the best part for you as a volunteer is you don't need to have prior expertise or experience in this area in order to get involved. We have put together training, a resource library. We have attorneys on staff to supervise and answer your questions. We offer malpractice insurance to every volunteer. So if you are active, a lawyer in good standing with at least one state bar, you can help. Doesn't matter where you're currently practicing or whether you're actively practicing at all. As long as you're allowed to practice, we would love your help. This program, as I said, is designed to help protect and in some cases recover billions, really tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of dollars that were meant to be committed to projects, some of which have already been built and were shovel ready or ready to go when these funds got terminated. Now, the Fund Protection Clinic is a good example of the kind of work we've done over the years where we are providing consultations, legal advice, in some cases limited scope assistance, but not litigating. And what we've realized in doing so, because we run clinics not only for fund protection, as I mentioned, I don't have time to get into everything, but we have clinics to help asylum seekers. We're working with hospitals on policies designed to help maximize the care that can be provided to pregnant people and transgender people across the country while remaining within the bounds of the law, which is constantly changing. We have legal research projects. We have so many different opportunities, but from the beginning, one of the things we had not done was litigation. And the reason for that is because there were so many great organizations that were already doing it and so many large law firms that were willing to take our referrals. So a lot of what we did was help in every way that we could for clients and for people coming to us for assistance, all the way up until they needed a litigator. And at that point, we would refer them out to one of our partner organizations or to one of our partner law firms. But what we've all seen is an increasing amount of reticence among larger law firms in particular to take any litigation matters which are seen as adverse to the interests of this administration. And unfortunately for us, almost everything we do is considered adverse to the interests of this administration. So we knew that this was the moment where we were likely going to have to build our internal capacity for litigation. But we wanted to do that in a way that replicated the success of our other models, which means not just hiring a team of staff attorneys, but figuring out how can we make sure that pro bono opportunities exist in the litigation space. And as Gary said, it's actually pretty rare. Most impact litigation organizations either do their work exclusively through their in-house staff attorneys, or they partner, co-counsel with other organizations or with large law firms that have resources to offer. Unfortunately, it is not easy to find a litigation opportunity as an independent, unaffiliated pro bono. So we knew if we were going to build a litigation team, we wanted it to be a combination of staff attorneys and volunteer attorneys. So that's what we've set out to build. I'm going to hand it over to Gary now to talk a little bit about the specifics of the program, a little bit more what you're hoping will happen and what kinds of people you're looking for, Gary, to help build out our teams, and then we'll go from there. So I'll hand it over to you, Gary.
Sure. So we, through Tracy's efforts, have already secured funding for 2 full-time senior experienced staff lawyers for the pro bono litigation core. And so the vision that we have, and we are getting started on this, but we have lots of terrific partners, is that leveraging the existing L4GG volunteer community, leveraging people like you all, we will work to identify pro bono volunteers who are willing to give, really sort of any amounts of time, including significant amounts of time. We will work with those people to understand well their experience and expertise, and then put together virtual, by that I mean, working in different places, case teams to take on client litigation matters, either as primary counsel or as co-counsel, matching the experience of the lawyers on the team with the needs of the case, and then oversight from a sort of managing partner perspective by me and Tracy and the senior lawyers at L4GG, and then coordinated by our full-time staff attorneys, and we'll have paralegal support. And as Tracy also indicated, we're not looking to duplicate the efforts of other amazing organizations that are out there doing work. In fact, we're looking to coordinate them. And so we're looking in terms of the cases that we take on to try to take on cases where the client, whether it be an organization or an individual, is otherwise having trouble finding counsel. And so, looking at some of the big picture things, that are happening or that Tracy's talking about, there may be, or there are organizations that have challenged a number of the administration's executive orders facially. There are organizations that have challenged, shutting down of big, government departments, or the laying off of an entire group of government workers. And while those organizations are prevailing in many of the court cases, there are still, at the sort of operational level, many people and organizations that need their own lawyer to try to get the relief, from those larger cases, or may not fit into the class or the relief that was obtained by another organization. And so those are the ones that we're trying to pick up. And I have to say, it's been inspiring actually to get into this community and start talking to people about this, because, talking to people at organizations like Democracy Forward, the ACLU, the labor unions, everybody has cases that they can't take and that they're turning down, but that they would love to take. And so one of our goals is to be able to mobilize lawyers to take those cases.
Fantastic. So in terms of experience level that you're looking for, I know with the first project we talked about, the fund protection project, it was less critical. Obviously, litigation experience would be helpful here, but can you shed a little more light on the sort of spectrum of litigation experience that you're thinking about?
Sure. So let's take, I mean, we can actually take the Fund Protection Clinic as a good example because we are transitioning into litigation through that clinic. And so L4GG already has contact with hundreds of environmental justice organizations who have been receiving federal money and other money to do incredible work on resilience, clean air, clean water, community building. And we are in the process, and hopefully there will be news to report this either later this week or early next week, of working with 3 other environmental justice organizations to file a class action complaint on behalf of organizations who had funds, we believe, illegally terminated by EPA under a couple of the executive orders that were issued after the inauguration. And so there, in terms of experience, there's actually quite a range of things that are useful to us and I think would be familiar to the people here. So we have clients where we need to understand the facts of their organization. We need declarations from them in support of, their arguments on standing and support of their arguments on irreparable harm for preliminary injunction. So we're doing, client discussions and then turning those into declarations and drafting. There is complaint drafting. There will be preliminary injunction drafting. There's I'm laughing, any number of legal issues that are coming up that no one has ever researched before because no administration has ever behaved this way before. Like, who knows what the word impoundment meant before January 20th of this year? And then, for a group with the experience level that you all have, just the sort of strategic advice on, where can this go? We're putting this team together. What should we have on these teams? What are the defense arguments going to be if we file this lawsuit? How can we be anticipating those? And so our goal, again, and I'm really committed to this, is to work. And we have terrific pro bono coordinator support on Tracy's team to be able to talk to each volunteer, I mean, literally one-on-one for the litigation matters, to find out both, what is the interest, what are the areas of interest, what is the level of experience, what kind of thing do you want to be working on? Do you want, if it comes to depositions, do you want to do that? Do you like drafting? Do you hate drafting? Right? This is all going to go better for everyone if people are doing both the subject matter and the types of things that they want to do. And from what I'm seeing so far, there's really, the cases will be varied enough that we could utilize all different kinds of experience.
Fantastic. Ellis, we've a couple questions have come in, and while we're still talking about these last 2 projects, why don't you bring those forward for Tracy and Gary?
Sorry. Yeah, glad to. Yeah, we've got a question from Margaret wondering about, you provide malpractice insurance. Do you also provide other sorts of supports like access to research resources? And then we've got another one from Pat who wants to know if you go looking for clients or do they find you? Do you have a process for vetting them?
Great questions. So let me take the first one, and I'll take a stab at the second one, but let Gary also weigh in. So the first one is, yes, we have a Westlaw account, and we do have the ability to provide accounts to volunteers who are being asked to do research. As you can imagine, regardless of whether you're a nonprofit or a law firm, Westlaw is expensive. So we do try to make sure that we're giving our account access to those who are being tasked specifically with legal research. But yes, if we're asking you to do work that requires a legal research tool, we will provide you with that tool. As for the cases, so where we're starting and with our first initial matters, we're working with clients that we have already been working with, but just not on litigation. So they're coming through our existing programs, whether it's the Fund Protection Clinic or our Work Permit Clinic or our Asylum Bridge program. The early clients are coming from our existing work, but I think that's going to evolve and change over time. So how I think we will end up connecting with clients is both through our existing pre-litigation programs, which is what I'm broadly referring to all of our clinics as, but also through referrals. I mean, we participate and coordinate with other litigating organizations, and every time we have a strategic convening or a weekly call with them, there are matters where it's like, who's going to take this? And sometimes no one can. So I think it's going to be a combination of internal clients as well as referrals from other organizations. They absolutely will be well vetted, but I would love Gary to weigh in on anything I may have missed.
No, I mean, you covered it very well. And the vetting, I would just add, we are going to be careful in our vetting, careful around conflicts, and both as for L4GG itself, and also ensuring, giving our volunteers enough information to make sure that if they're doing other things, there won't be any conflicts. I mean, we are, unfortunately coming to this in an environment where we know that the opposing side on all of these cases is going to look at every single aspect and challenge many aspects. And on a lot of the matters, they don't really have very good substantive defenses. And so they're just going to attack the lawyers on the other side.
Thank you both. Tracy, do you want to talk about the Asylum Bridge project a little bit? Do you have a
Yeah, sure. I
base
don't have
on
a
that?
slide for that one,
That's fine.
but I will talk a little bit about Project Corazon, which is our immigrants' rights project. We started, let me just quickly answer this one question from David. Yes, you need malpractice insurance, but we provide it. So if you're volunteering through one of our programs, you're going to be covered through our policy. So you won't need to cover that cost. But coming back to Project Corazon, so that program was started in 2018 when we started to see the news about children being torn away from their parents at the border. The family separation crisis prompted so many lawyers in our community to say, how can we help? That we started reaching out to other organizations that had specialized in providing legal services to asylum seekers. And the resounding response that we got from those organizations was, we are underwater. If there is any way that you can help, we would welcome the help. But the one thing that they couldn't do, and they told us they didn't want, was for us to just send them hundreds of volunteers. Because as I said earlier, most organizations are not set up for that kind of volume. Even organizations that are looking for pro bono help, usually, if they have a big influx of potential volunteers, there's no capacity to go through them and vet them. And that's part of what makes volunteer management challenging. So we realized we were going to have to take that on for ourselves. And we launched Project Corazon as a way for attorneys who were not already experienced immigration or asylum lawyers to be able to volunteer their time, but also get the right training, the right supervision, the right insurance, all of those things. So the work that Project Corazon has done over the years has varied because immigration policy and the situation on the ground seems to change constantly. So over the years, we've done work like making sure there are lawyers in credible fear interviews for thousands of asylum seekers, documenting what's happening, writing down grounds for potentially requesting a new credible fear interview or arguing that it was unfair. One very brief example was when one of the clients that came through that program was being required to do their entire interview in a language that they said they did not speak, with no translation provided. There were so many circumstances like that, but that was just one of the projects. We also then ended up asking our volunteers to work on motions to try to get people new credible fear interviews or to try to get folks out of detention. We've done bond cases, when the poultry farm, not the farms, the factory, the poultry processing plants, that's what they were. It took me a second, where there was big raids, hundreds of workers being caught up, and they needed just help getting out on bond. In 2019, when the Remain in Mexico program was announced, we ended up creating the first, and I believe only for a very long time, on-the-ground legal program for asylum seekers who were trapped in Mexico, people who were not from Mexico, but were not being allowed to come into the United States, which is, of course, where the U.S. lawyers are. So the question was, how in the world are they supposed to get representation when they're not even allowed to step foot into the country where the lawyers are? So we set up on the other side of the border, and that became a bridge from those people to the lawyers in the U.S. who could help them remotely. All of that is to say that the nature of the work we do on immigration seems to change constantly. Right now, we're doing a lot of work permit clinics where we are helping those who have the legal right to request a work permit, but need guidance as to their eligibility. They have a lot of questions about whether applying for the work permit will jeopardize anything else. So we run those clinics. But in addition, we also want to be able to expand into what we're calling our Asylum Bridge Project, which would give pro bonos the opportunity to work on helping to file asylum cases without having to stay on that case for unlimited number of years. Again, it's about identifying those barriers. So we've looked for ways, how can we get lawyers to help with actually just getting the 589s filed in a complete way so that this person is on track, but if we recognize that if we ask lawyers to take on full representation in an asylum case, you don't know how long that's going to take. That's a years-long commitment, and that's what stops a lot of lawyers from helping. So that's what the Asylum Bridge Project is about. We have not officially launched it yet, but we do have an amazing supervising attorney, a fantastic program manager who himself we met when he was seeking asylum. We actually met him in Matamoros, which is where we set up our legal clinic. Thankfully, he's now been granted asylum and he works with us full time. So we have resources and team members who would love help. So I'm going to put up towards the end of the presentation an email address. If you're interested in getting involved in one of the programs like Project Corazon or Asylum Bridge that I haven't gone into detail on, please just send us an email and we will get on a call. We'll figure out exactly where to place you. And there's always a need for people who can help asylum seekers, especially right now. They are just being hunted down in the streets, as you are seeing. And the more people, again, that we can help, even just to get them some type of temporary status, is a huge accomplishment in this environment.
Thanks, Tracy. In addition to sending the contact information for that work, how do you recommend people take a first step towards joining your efforts? I know on your website there's a survey information. Is that the path people should probably be taking, or just can you give guidance to the folks on the line?
Yeah, so I'm going to, in fact, let me skip ahead a couple of slides.
Okay.
Let's see here.
And maybe Tracy, while you're doing that, I'll answer Margaret's question in the chat. We, referring to We the Action, yes, we are in contact with them. I have had a couple of great calls with Anna Chu, who runs We the Action, and her sort of outreach external pro bono coordinator. And we think that there is terrific synergies with them. Again, on this idea that, they are a place where both people go, but also where cases go, where organizations go to say we need help on something. And so some of the overflow cases that we're talking about that other organizations are unable to take, we're going to coordinate with them on that.
Yes, I will say, just for those who may be wondering, there are some pretty big differences between Lawyers for Good Government and We the Action, but I think the biggest one for purposes of this conversation is that what we do is design and manage programs, and we recruit pro bono attorneys to participate in those programs and provide them with the support we've talked about. We the Action, I believe, is more of a platform where any organization who's in need of a lawyer can post an opportunity, and volunteer lawyers can go to that platform to look for opportunities. So I think both things are very important, but in case you're wondering about the distinction, theirs is more of a matching platform, whereas we are actually just looking for attorneys to participate in our in-house programs.
I love your programmatic approach and how it's really focused on the barriers to entry, right, particularly for unaffiliated lawyers, and knocking those down systematically, be it malpractice insurance that you're providing, be it training that's needed because people are concerned, well, I was a tax lawyer, what do I know about asylum cases? Yeah. I applaud you for that, because I think it's thinking through the barriers is critical to getting the energy we need to really pull this community in to help you out.
Yeah, and I do want to just pick up on that. Tracy mentioned that one of the barriers on asylum cases was that people don't know how long they might be working on a case. One of the barriers, obviously, on a litigation case is litigation is incredibly unpredictable, and there could be 0 work for 2 weeks and 80 hours of work the following week. And so, you know, we have that in mind. And one of our goals in putting together our case teams will be to make sure that there is, you know, first of all, that we engage with people about how much time they want to and can commit, and then to build in some redundancy on every team so that, you know, if 2 cases blow up at the same time, or something blows up in somebody's life at the same time that our case is blowing up, you know, we can accommodate that without any detriment either to the lives of our volunteers or to the quality of the lawyering that's happening on the case.
That's great. That's much appreciated. Thank you for thinking ahead like that. That's fantastic. Okay. Tracy, you want to talk about the impact docket? And
yeah, sure. So I think, you know, I have another slide after this that will provide you with the emails and all of that. But if you're not quite ready to volunteer with one of the pro bono programs, but you want to stay in the loop and you'd like to know about opportunities, best way to do that is to subscribe to our impact docket. And the link is here on the slide, but I can also type it into the chat, which is l4gg.org/impact docket. Impact Docket is a newsletter. It goes out every 2 weeks, and the focus is to answer the question for lawyers, what can I do right now to help? And we know that sometimes you have an hour, sometimes you have a week, sometimes you have a month. So we've tried to structure the opportunities in that way to say, if you just need something that you can do in a few minutes, here's something you can do. And it's usually an advocacy type of action. If you're looking for a pro bono opportunity, here's something you can get involved with. So it's a good way to stay in the loop, to make sure you know what opportunities there are. And you're also welcome to share it and forward it to others in your network who may be interested in getting involved. Let's see on the next slide. So here are some other ways to connect with us. So first off, again, if you are ready to dive right into pro bono, I would suggest, yes, you can fill out the volunteer form on our website, but what we've tried to do here is create a little bit of a shortcut for you to be able to, as a member of Third Act, directly connect with our pro bono team. So for that, you can email probono@l4gg.org. And that should put you right into the inbox of our pro bono team, who can then reach out to you and help match you with an opportunity. Another way to get involved is to join our SMS, which is basically just text messages, rapid response list. So to do that, all you have to do is send a text message to this phone number. It doesn't matter what you put in the text. It's an automated system. Just send any text to 771-203-4895. You'll get a response that says, thank you so much. We need this information. Once you've done that, you will get texts also about opportunities, events, webinars. We have a lot of educational type events that we put on. We have a book club event coming up, for example, with Leah Littman around her book called Lawless. We have a lot of things that you can find out about, and we found that the texts are a great way to stay in the loop, just because folks' email inboxes are so overloaded these days. And we don't also want to count solely on social media, because who knows when that access is going to get revoked, or when they're going to, you know, deplatform us, or whatever actions they might take. We also, if you're interested in an employment opportunity, we are hiring. If you go to l4gg.org/careers, you'll see several openings for attorneys, including the litigating opportunities that Gary mentioned. There's positions that are not yet posted there as well. For instance, within the next few weeks, I would expect you'll see a job posting for our very first in-house general counsel, which should be a great opportunity for someone with the right experience. So if you're looking for those types of opportunities, please do check our careers page. I'm not doing my job if I don't mention that your donations are also very much appreciated. If what you have to give is money and not time, please give. You can go to l4gg.org/donate. And we have a lot of different ways that you can contribute. If you have questions about that, or you want to speak with someone before making a donation, please reach out to us as well. You can always reach us at support, which I'll put in here as well, support@l4gg.org. I'm just going to take one step back and cover one of the slides I skipped because I wanted to share about our research opportunities as well. I'm going to see if I'm able to show you one of our policy research hubs. I'm not sure if this is going to work with the screen sharing, but let's see if it does.
Yeah.
Are you now able to see a website that says
Yeah.
Policy Resource Hub? Okay.
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can expand this a little bit. So one of the types of pro bono opportunities that we offer is research. This is something that is pretty straightforward to engage with, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But what I wanted to point out here is that this one, the Policy Resource Hub for Reproductive Health, was created in response to the Dobbs decision. The night that the Dobbs decision was announced, I got a text message from the Chief of Staff of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And that text said, pretty sure this is the exact message. Hey, Tracy, I have 60,000 OBGYNs in need of immediate legal guidance. Can you help? So that was quite a text message to receive, but it turned out we could help. Of course, you know, we had a number of conversations that grew out of that. But what they said to us was basically things are changing so quickly that the number one thing we need is we need to know on any given day what is the law in our state. And that has to include not just statutory law, but pending cases, injunctions, you know, they're issued and then they're blocked and then they're issued again. And what on any given day are we as providers allowed to do? So we undertook this massive challenge, which was how do you answer very concrete legal questions, not just once, but every day, and not just in one state, but in 56 states and territories. How do you do that? And the answer turned out to be a combination of technology, an in-house attorney, and 600 pro bono attorneys who still work on this every single week. So this project, if you check it out, you can click on abortion laws by state. You can click on any state. Let's just go to where I live here. It's never good, but here it is. So you can see that right now there are 3, I think, questions that are being asked. One is, what are the limitations on abortion in this state? The next one is, what are the exceptions, exemptions, or affirmative defenses? I'm going to skim through just so I can give you the general idea. And then, what are the laws relating to minors accessing abortion in this state? Now, what I want you to notice is a couple of things. First, in every answer, we provide citations that you can click directly to see for yourself the source of what we're saying. But in addition, for every question, you will always know the date on which it is accurate. So you can see here, for example, question 2 is accurate as of today. And that was something that ACOG told us was critical, because if they go to a website that tracks these laws and it tells them the law, but they don't know if it's from today or a month ago or a year ago, it's like having no information at all. So this was something that we built into the platform as well. Now, what we're doing, again, in response to the express need of the community, is replicating the Policy Resource Hub, but this time for trans health. So as you know, trans healthcare is being attacked at almost every level across the country right now, in much the same way that reproductive rights have been attacked for the past several years. So what we are launching is, again, it says 50 states. I think it's also still 56 states and territories, legal database tracking laws and policies affecting transgender rights. This will be updated daily by pro bono attorneys, and again, built in response to hundreds of anti-trans bills introduced in 2024, 2025. So again, this is the kind of research work that you can engage with if that's your preferred way of engaging. At any given time, the need will vary. But like I said, if you reach out to our team, they can let you know, well, here's what we have open right now. Here's what you might be able to do later. With this work, it's always important to have a strong bench, not just the people who are doing it now, but where's the waiting list? Because, you know, volunteers have to come and go. That's how our lives work. So as soon as one person needs to step down, we need to have another volunteer ready to step in.
Tracy, we got a couple of more questions. One from Rachel. She wants to know whether you work with law students. And then Bob wants to know whether the Policy Hub is open for the general public or just for the L4G members.
Okay, so we do work with law students. Obviously, there are different barriers there. Law students have to always be supervised by attorneys, but we do work with a number of law school clinics. And if you reach out to our pro bono team, I'm sure they'd be able to tell you more about how we work with law students. The Policy Hub is a public resource. So the website, which is RHLAP, very confusing, but the original name of the project was Reproductive Health Legal Access Project. So that's what that stands for. But it's RHLAP, I'll just type it in here, .lawyersforgoodgovernment.org. So the behind the scenes part is limited to our volunteers. That's where they see their instructions and their trainings and enter their daily updates. But the public facing website is available to anyone who may need it. And the same thing will be true of the Trans Health Hub as well.
Fantastic. Any other questions, Els?
No, I think we've covered all of them.
I would like to, before we end, given the time we're in right now, I'd like to ask you both a question that we didn't discuss beforehand, but it's, what gives you hope right now?
Yeah.
What keeps you hopeful? I think a lot of us are struggling with the daily barrage of news. Seeing what your great organizations like you are doing certainly helps. But from each of you, I'd like just your take on what's keeping you hopeful right now that this is going to turn in a better direction if it's not already turning.
Well, there's two things that are giving me hope right now. The first one is that the courts are, for the most part, it's not a perfect system, but for the most part, the courts are doing their job. If you look, for example, at the cases involving the executive orders targeting individual law firms, those law firms who challenge the EOs are winning in court. And not only are the courts doing their job in terms of applying the actual law as opposed to outside interests, is they're doing so in a way that demonstrates their outrage. If you look at the language used in some of these decisions, it's not just, here's the decision. It's this attitude of, I can't believe this is even in front of me right now. And that gives me hope. But what also gives me hope is seeing how many lawyers, even many lawyers who haven't been engaged before now, are saying, please tell me what I can do. And that is something that it inspired me in 2016 when people started to join the Lawyers for Good Government group and then organization, but it also inspires me now today. There's this spirit of reporting for duty. I'm seeing it over and over again. Lawyers just stepping up and saying, I'm here. Here's my experience. Here's how much time I have. Please just tell me what to do. I'm meeting weekly, if not daily now, with lawyers and organizations, volunteers, supporters, donors, people who are saying, in many cases, the number one thing that's stopping them is not an unwillingness to help, but not knowing what to do. And if their biggest issue is not knowing what to do, we can work with that. We have plenty of things for you to do. So that gives me hope.
Fantastic. Gary, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the community out there of both clients and lawyers is really one thing that's giving me a lot of hope right now. That just there are, so many people who are looking to protect the rule of law and to serve, communities on issues of immigration and environmental justice. And then the other thing that I'm sort of specifically hopeful for is we have this incredible army of lawyers here, and at some point we're going to be able to stop playing defense and start playing some offense. And so I'm looking forward, and that's an opportunity for people here too. If you have thoughts about, listen, I don't know that I want to defend necessarily, but I have some ideas about what we could do next. For some people are calling it, well, Democracy Forward calls it Democracy 2025. Some people call it Democracy 2029, but there's creativity out there for looking ahead as well.
Great. Thank you both. I'm super excited about the potential for our groups to coordinate. It seems like it's hand in glove. The problems that you're addressing, the work you're doing to reduce the barriers to entry is exactly, I think, what we've as a team been looking for. And the fact that our interests as well are focused primarily on the democracy side and the climate side, but if we have members who want to get involved on the immigration side or on reproductive rights or transgender rights, by all means, as you said earlier, whatever you're passionate about, we know how important that is to your commitment to pro bono, and we certainly encourage our members to engage in any way that they feel they can. So thank you both so much. We have a recording of this that we will make available for others who weren't able to join tonight, but really appreciate your time and really look forward to collaborating with you. Pat, Alice, anything else before we sign off?
Well, I don't know if you want to take one more final
Sure.
question.
Sure.
If you do, it's from Virginia. She says she's not a litigator, and she knows a lot of other lawyers who spent their careers doing public interest advocacy and legislative work. If they want to get involved, L4G may not be the right organization for them, but do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
it
it's
is
a
the right
great,
organization.
it's a great question. The reality is there are so many organizations doing great work. And if we're not the right group for you, I hope you find one that is. I can think of a few organizations. What's already been mentioned is if you're just trying to get a sense for what's out there and you want to see a wide range of opportunities, I think it makes sense to check out We the Action and see what they have on offer. If you're looking to do, for example, things like bar complaints. I know that there's an organization called Lawyers Defending American Democracy that has done a great job with that work and is still very active, and I think they're still looking for volunteers. There's organizations like the Brennan Center, the American Constitution Society, the Alliance for Justice, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. There's so many great organizations, and many of them may be looking for help. So I encourage you, get involved with honestly, just anything. Do what you can with any group that's doing work that's aligned with your values and your mission. And if it turns out that you're not sure, we'd still be happy to talk to you to see if there's room for us, for you, or a place for you that matches your skill set and your interests. But if not, thank you for doing whatever you can with whatever organization you choose to get engaged with.
My favorite advice I heard once was just do something.
Yep.
Just do what you can, period.
Yeah.
That's all, just do something. Not doing anything is not the approach we need here. We need all hands on deck, and in any way that helps. Thank you again. I think our hour is up, and again, I really appreciate it and look forward to our collaboration in the future. Thanks everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much, everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you. Great.
Really nice job, you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, that was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Have a good night.
You
Much.
too.
Mark,
Bye-bye.
you know how to bring it in on time.
I love you guys.
Working in Intel for 27 years, you learn how to keep an agenda going. Take care.